Okay, so I'm here in my nice, clean, organized workshop, and I'm going to start doing a maintenance on my road bike. This is my 2012 Specialized Allay, and it needs just some basic stuff, right? It's end of the year, once a year kind of maintenance. I'm going to redo the bar tape, of course. I'm going to take the handlebars off, check the bearings. I'll be changing the cables and casings, clean the chain, clean the rear block, inspect the brake pads and things like that. So we'll put a quick little video together for that, and we'll see we'll see how it works out. Okay. So there's the bike. I've already taken the wheels off, and I've taken the chain off. And in a previous video, like I said, I like to take the chain off. I clean it first with the chain cleaning tool, and I lay it out on the towel. This is it's fairly clean. It doesn't have all the grit off it, but it's clean enough to touch and not get your hands really dirty. But what I'll do next is I'll toward the end of the bike service, the last thing I do is I'll put the chain on, and I'll degrease this and clean it up before I put it on, and then after I put it on, I'll oil it up. And you can see in the video here, I got Nelson Vales, the Cheetah. This is a guy I met at a bike show. He signed the poster for me, and he signed me a hat. And I got a picture with him. And I remember watching him get the silver medal back in 1984. So, he's a great guy, great competitor. I follow him on Strava, and I see him riding his Cheetah bike out in California. All right, so I've taken the bar tape off, and the next thing I want to do is I actually want to cut these cable ends off using the Park Tool cable cutter. I'll take the screws off the brakes and the derailleur to pull the cable through, but the first thing I want to do is actually cut off the small crimp, the barrel on the ends. You can see them here. I want to cut that off. So when I loosen the bolt, loosen the nut here, I'll be able to pull the cable completely through. All right, next I'm going to use this Park Tool Allen wrench. It's got the 3 sizes on it. It's the AWS 1. And what I'll do is I'll start taking off the cables out of the brake housings. Loosen these up. All right, next what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these brake shoes off, and I'm going to inspect them, but I got a feeling I'm just going to end up replacing them. I do have spares. I'm also going to totally remove this locking nut, this locking mechanism, and clean it. They tend to get a little rusty, so I'm going to clean it up. To get rid of the rust, you just have to kind of polish it or rub it with some aluminum foil. It takes the rust off. And then I'll put a little bit of grease over it, just to kind of protect it. All right, so before I cut the new casings, and tape them back in place on the bike, what I want to do is I want to clean these handlebars. You can see here where the old tape was on here, and it left some of the material kind of stuck to the bars. So I'm going to clean that off. What I do is I actually use WD-40 and a Scotch-Brite pad, and it cleans it up really, really well. This side isn't too bad. Actually, these bars aren't that bad compared to what I've had in the past. All right, something else you want to take care of is any known maintenance or adjustments that have maybe slipped out of place since the last time you worked. And what I do know is that this right side brake lever has slipped down out of position. What I like to typically do is keep them parallel to the bottom of the bars. And you can see that this one has dropped, it dropped about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to get that back up where that lever is flush with the top of the level when I tighten it again. All right, then that's just simply adjusting, loosening this nut here. That'll loosen that cage, and you'll be able to move the brake lever up and down and just retighten it. So for the bike, I purchased the Shimano Road brake cable set and Road shift cable set. And this comes with full housings, and I don't have full housings on my bike, but you've got to take the housings out and cut them to length. A good practice is to keep your old housings, because these are the length that they came with. You can make small adjustments if you need to, but this is a great place to start. So what we'll do is we'll take these apart. We'll take the housings out and cut those to match these housings, and then we'll line them up. We'll get them ready, and then we'll go ahead and install them. So what comes in the package, of course, is the housings with the cables installed. You have to slide those out. You don't want to cut the housings with the cables in place, but they also give you the ferrule that goes on the end of the cable and the little barrel that you crimp on the end to keep the wire from fraying. I don't use these aluminum ferrules. I purchased in my case here from an earlier video, you see I've got these plastic ones. They come in 4mm and 5mm. The brake housings, the brake cables are 5mm, and the shifters are 4mm. I use the plastic ones because of the galvanic corrosion that you get from these aluminum ones. These will actually, through dissimilar metals in some cases, you get a galvanic corrosion, and they'll get stuck in the bosses in the bike, hard to get out. But the plastic ones don't have that problem. So these are the cutters you're going to use to cut the cable and also to crimp the barrels on. Now I've just cut this cable, and you can see the factory cut. See that nice round hole? When you cut this with your cutters, you don't get such a nice hole. You need to make that nice and round again. So what I do is I actually go over to, I've got a grinding wheel. I actually grind that off flat, nice and flush, because you can see here, it's hard to focus on, but you can see that the edge is kind of rough. I'll grind that nice and smooth, and then I'll use an awl, right? So an angled pick, which is right here. I'll use that awl to open up the hole to get that hole nice and round again. All right, so here we go. That's the factory hole right there. And then this side, that's the hole that I just cleaned up. So it's nice and smooth. And we're gonna test it. We're gonna run the cable through it to make sure it's nice and smooth. You can see here it's come through. Just gotta open this up because it pinches it. But right now that's in. I'll put the casing on, then I'll push it through. All right, so the shifter cable is a little bit more difficult, but they go into that bottom hole, right? So you see it, and inside there's a track, and you just start pushing it, and it'll find its way up, and you know you have it when it comes up through the correct position for the cable. So this one's all set. Now what I'm going to do is just pull it through, and then I'll connect the cable housing to the other side. Okay, so now that all the cables are in the shifters and all the casings are in place and cut to length, right? So the next thing I got to do is actually tape these down against the bars so I can get the bar tape on. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll connect them to the brake calipers and the derailleurs, but they should be all set now. Okay, so those cables are now wrapped tightly up against the bars. You can see what I do is I run one in the front of the bar and one in the back of the bar. So of course, when you wrap your hand around, it gives it a little bit of an oval shape in the bar tape because the casings are sticking out a little bit. So for me, that's a more comfortable position. But those are wrapped up really nice in there now. And actually the next step, if you want, you can put the bar tape on, or you can finish the cable installation. Okay, so I got the cables all roughed in. See them right there in the pinched into the bolts, down through the eyelets. Everything's kind of pinched into the bolts and just kind of roughed in place right now. And I put the brake shoes back on after I cleaned them out. I go in there with a pick to make sure there's no metal shavings in the brake shoes. So clean them all up, put a little bit of lubricant on the threads before I put them back together. And now I'm ready to clean the wheels and put the wheels back on to do a final adjustment on the brakes. So what I do, and I'll just show this on the front wheel, is I always clean the wheels before I put them back on the bike. So I give them a spin, right? I just kind of spray some Simple Green as it's rotating, and then I take a paper towel and wipe the wheels down to get them nice and clean. And a little trick I use to clean the sprocket is I actually buy this gear floss, and you know it's pretty much like dental floss, and you can run it in between the sprockets. Kind of cleans them up really nice. All right, now final clean the chain. Get a little bit of degreaser on here. Like I said, I use the WD-40. It's a good degreaser. And then I just go through and kind of scrub it with a brush. And then when I'm done, I clean it with some Simple Green. Put the chain back on the bike, and then hit it with chain lube. So another thing I'm going to do is I have these speed plate pedals, and speed plate pedals it's a bearing on this axle, and in here you have to make sure you grease that. And right here on the end is the grease port. You can take this screw out, and then you just have to get a grease gun similar to this, and then it'll actually go in there. You can squirt the grease in with some pressure, and you force the old grease out the back side. And I'll try to show this. It's hard to do the camera and to do the work with one hand, but we'll try to do this. But I do this like once a year. So I already did this in the spring, but since I got it in the workshop, I'll do it again right now. It doesn't take a lot of grease. So there's a small screw right here. You need to take it out with, I call it, these are jeweler's screwdrivers, but a jeweler's Phillips head. And the screw is super small. You can see it right here on my pants. And this is just, the screw doesn't retain anything. It's just a plug for the end of the grease. Now I've already put the grease in, and you can see how it forced the old grease out. And what you do is you just pump a few more times until you see clean grease come out, and then you're all done. You just wipe it off and you put the screw back in. All right, some critical spots that you should really clean well is down inside these jockey wheels. These get loaded up with a lot of debris from the road that gets caught in with the oils and the chain lube. So sometimes you can pull just like gunks of grease and goo out of here. And you want to make sure they spin nice and freely like these are. If they don't, you can buy new jockey wheels, or you can clean and exchange the bearings. Sometimes you may actually have to take these two screws out, take this plate off, and actually take the bearing out and really do a great comprehensive cleaning on those. But these are pretty good. I clean them almost every time I clean the chain, so they're in great shape. Another spot that tends to get overlooked is inside the dropout. You want to make sure these are clean, up inside and the faces. A lot of creaks that come from your bike, and people confuse those with bottom bracket creaks, are really just debris and dirt and grime that's caught up in the dropout. And when you put your quick release on, or your through axle, you're just not getting it super tight against the face, and it moves just enough to give you a creak. So you want to make sure those are cleaned out quite well. And also up on the brakes, these caliper brakes, you want to make sure it's clean up inside here where the two faces tend to rub together, right? They tend to slide against each other. You want to get a nice free movement. You want to get some clean. You want to get nice and clean on the faces in here. You want to get it clean in between. And, because just road debris just builds up in here. And these are opportunities and key focus spots to keep your bike nice and clean. Okay, so like I said, I like to put a little bit of lubricant, and I clean the dropouts. Just put a little bit of grease in the dropouts, and I kind of smear this around my finger. This all helps prevent creaking when the skewer's put on. Keeps the debris out of there. Okay, so I just took care of a couple of things here. So the first thing you'll see is the chain is nice and clean. I finished cleaning that with the WD-40 and a brush. And then to get the WD-40 out, I hit it with some Simple Green mixture with water that I have, and I wipe it down really well. The chain is in nice shape, it's super clean. I did check the stretch on it. It's not even 50% worn, so I keep the chain back on. This particular chain is not directional. Some of them are. You should double check that for sure before you put it back on. I do use the Quick Link. You can see it down here at the bottom. It's dark. I put the chain on, of course, in the smaller gears, right? The small sprocket in the front and the small sprocket in the back. Takes a lot of tension off the chain, just makes it easier to put that on. I line it up. I don't snap it into place, but I do line it up, and I make sure the ears are nice and square and parallel to the chain and not, not bent out. But then I pedal the Quick Link through until it's on the top, right? So here it comes on the top, here it is. Now to set that in place, I get ready and I, under here like this, and I bang the pedal. And you hit that hard enough and that'll actually snap that right into place. And that's fine. That's not gonna go anywhere. That popped into place nice and tight. Now there is some controversy of whether or not you can reuse Quick Links if you've used them once before. I do, I use them a couple of times. I might pop that Quick Link on and off 4 or 5 times, and you can tell if it's not, if it's worn and should be replaced. When you take the tool that pops them off, if it's got some resistance when you're popping that off, and you can feel it pop, it's okay to put it back on again. But when you take that tool to take it off and it just kind of slides apart instead of pops apart, yeah, I would go ahead and change it out. It's not a problem. Okay, so we're just about done. The brakes are on. I still have to put the bar tape on, but everything's all set up front. And I just have to adjust the shifting. The back rear derailleur, that's usually quite simple. The front derailleur can be a little tricky. So I just have 2 more tasks to do, adjust the shifting and put the bar tape on. And then I'll go ahead and trim these wires when I'm all done. I'll trim those cables off and put the caps on so they don't fray. So we're almost done. All right, so using the same cutters that I used for the cables, I'll just cut that off. And then the same cutter has a mechanism to put the ferrule in. And you just take these small end caps, and they fit right in this crimp section. You can see I'm holding one there, and there's the open end. Focus it a little bit. Come over here, I'm gonna drop it on, and just crimp it right in place like that. Here's the one in the back done, the rear derailleur. Crimp that on already. And then you just kind of give it a little bit of bend so it doesn't stick out, hit your foot or something when you're riding. Okay, so now we get started. We got tape on the back side to help hold it on. You notice that the tape is offset to one side. Now we're gonna do a bottom over the top wrap. Right, that way you end up with it in the right direction here so you don't pull back on it and loosen it. Make sure that when you start that this is on the short side, and then you'll be able to wrap it around without sticking it on your bars too badly. So this will start like that, and I'll use a small piece of tape to hold this in place as I start wrapping. So the next thing you want to do is take these pieces that they give you with the bar tape, and you want to cut them to length. They'll fit right here around the back of the clamp for the brake lever. It'll stick on there, but it'll probably fall off before I get there with the tape. So I'm just going to put it on as I approach it. Okay, so we start wrapping from the bottom in, around the top, under and over wrap. Wrapping about 50% coverage, and then just keep that pattern going. You got to keep a little bit of tension on the bar tape, just a little bit of a stretch, not a lot. You're not trying to break it, but just a little bit of a stretch. Keep it on there tight, but also you might end up a little bit short if you don't stretch it as you go. You might need to wrap it once or twice to get the feel for it, but just start going, see how it works out. If you end up a little bit short, just unwrap it and start again. Learn as you go. All right, so here's that piece. As we approach the brake lever, we'll put that in place. And then you just kind of, the glue holds it, the tape holds it a little bit, but you want to get that lined up. And then you want to wrap around it to hold that in place. Come up on the top, go back down between it, and that, looks like a nice wrap. Get your spacing started again as you head up onto the top bar. All right, so I want to show you here is as you approach the end, you want to make sure you have a nice straight surface here. So what you do is you actually just find out where the end is, line it up with about the front edge, and just kind of cut along this. And you'll see that this has got a taper to it now, and that's been cut. And now when you wrap it around, it's a nice straight surface. Now that the edge is cut smoothly, I like to finish it off with the electrical tape. Now I like to use white tape because I just think it looks nice on the bike. And we'll come around and, I'd probably just do a double wrap, make a nice clean edge here as you go around. This is just more aesthetics. It's going to hold the tape on from moving, but you want to do a nice job here to make sure the bike just looks nice. Right, and there you go. Okay, now there you have it. And I went ahead and finished both sides. So here's the finished product. Nice and even. Nice clean wrap. Nice clean look with the white tape on there. And I put the end plugs in. Like I said, I don't use the plugs that come with the bar tape. I have a screw-in plug on this side, an expanding plug, and on the other side I use a mirror that just presses in. But I think that came out really nice. Okay, so this maintenance is all done. We got the new bar tape on. We got all new cables and housings in. This bike's really going to ride nice. Gonna have to do a quick shakedown ride just to make sure the gears are indexing properly. You might need to make some adjustments on the barrels, but I'm really happy how this came out. I like the black bar tape with the white accents. It kind of looks nice on the bike. So hey, so I hope you get a chance to do this yourselves and have some fun with it. All right.